Hello my quilting friends! My name is Leah Day and welcome to this tutorial all about installing Renae's red snappers on your Longarm leader cloth. So what is this exactly? This is a Longarm loading system that is going to completely eliminate penning for you forever. You are able to clamp your backing fabric in place along with your quilt top so you can get started Longarm quilting so much faster. So let's get started. I can't wait to show you how to modify the leader cloth you have right now to work with this system. So the first step to installing your red snappers is to sew a gusset in your leader cloth. And you need to do this with all of the pieces of leader cloth. So this is my top front rail, and then here you can see this is my bottom front rail, and then you can also see my back rail here also has had this gusset sewn in. So let me show you what I did. I just simply folded the fabric over and I measured 3/4 of an inch from that fold, and I placed a mark. I marked that with my water-soluble blue pen, and then I'm really glad I did this. I stitched that line with a blue thread so it contrasts, and I'm really happy I did that. It's kind of a lucky thing because it shows up really nicely, and that actually helps with the clamping process. So I'm really happy I did not use white thread. I used a contrasting thread. In fact, I wish I'd contrasted just a little bit more, maybe like bright orange or black or something even brighter, maybe hot pink purple. That would be cool because you want to be able to see that clearly because that's what you're going to use to line up your fabric. Okay, so I was pulling out this pipe. This is the snapper tubing, and I want to just show you how this comes together. It comes in, I think they're like 36-inch long tubes. And what you do is you install this double-headed screw. And so I'm unscrewing this just so you can see how they snap together. It's very simple. You just thread the screw into one end. I used a pair of pliers to help me screw that in nice and tight. And then you just start twisty and bring those until the red tubing is nicely squished together. So you just keep twisting until it's all squished together. And you put 3 of the pieces or 4 of the pieces together. I think it's 3. You put 3 pieces all together, and that creates a 10-foot section. And you thread it all the way through that casing that you made on your leader cloth. Now, I only have an 8-foot frame, and this is available in a 10-foot pack. So, of course, I had extra tubing. I ended up cutting it off, and I left a nice bit extra on the end. Now, that's totally up to you if you want to leave extra or not. I know sometimes I like to push the limit of my frame. Now, the one thing about it is, I am now expanding my frame. I'm going to have to go to Lowe's and find one of those double-headed screws, not a big deal, and fit that in and then put that piece that I cut off on the end of it. So not a big deal, certainly not a deal breaker. That's hardware I can definitely find at the hardware store. Okay, so that is all of the prep, and it did take about an hour to sew this, to fold it over very carefully, get that nice and accurate 3/4 inch casing, and to sew that in place on all my leader cloth. That took about an hour, but this has saved me so much time with loading my Longarm, and I'm going to show you exactly how it works next. So I've come around to the back of my machine and folded my backing fabric in half. I'm going to line up that fold, that center mark, with the center of my leader cloth. I've just marked that on the leader cloth. And now what I'm going to do is line up the straight line of the fabric, that nice straight edge, with the stitching line where I stitched that casing onto the leader cloth. And this is one of those things. I think it's really good that I accidentally used contrasting thread. I just stitched it with whatever I had in my machine, and it happened to be contrasting blue thread. So I can really easily see that and line it up nicely. So then now I just take the short clamp and lock it in place. And this is just kind of temporary clamping. It's not the official super duper ready to quilt clamp. This is just getting it in position, getting that backing fabric started, and then I can take my big clamp and get it in place. So what I like to do then is roll it. Actually, I like to have it up on top of the rail so I can really easily control it. So there we go, kind of set it just like that. It doesn't like to stay in position because of the way this leader cloth rolls up. but this works really, really well. Okay, so with this in position, I can see the fabric easily, and then I can kind of use the rail to press against it, and that helps to lock the fabric into position, okay? And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a longer bar, and I'm going to start in the center. I'm not going to remove the clamp that I have there already because it's what's holding the fabric in place. I'm just going to start right next to it, and I'm just going to press down, and then as I go, I'm just making sure that edge of the backing fabric stays in nice alignment with that stitching line, with the line that I stitched on the casing. And when I get down here close enough, I can remove that clamp on the end and just keep working my way all the way down. You want it to extend beyond your quilt backing. That's just fine. That actually helps to hold the whole thing in place. Okay, and I'll grab another bar, and now that this is in place, I can take out that middle short clamp, just like so. And again, just line everything up, make sure it's nice and smooth. And then start from here and work my way down. And you can see just how much faster this is than penning. Oh my gosh. You know, and this is the thing. At first, I was kind of like, you know, there's faster systems, but you know, it's kind of nice to pen. I can, you know, have a chance to listen to an audiobook or, you know, watch a silly show while I'm doing this, that kind of thing. And then I realized it was taking upwards of 45 to 50 minutes to pen a quilt to my leader cloth. And when I realized just how much time that was taking out of my day to get a quilt on the frame, I was like, let's speed this up, you know, let's turbocharge this so that way I can spend more time getting more quilts done. So there we go. That looks good. Clamp it all the way down and it's locked in position. So there we go. That is the back rail clamped up, and then I'm going to lock that and roll it up. And you can see it does add a little bit of bulk here. You know, it is just a little bit bulky, but that's okay. I'm just going to roll that up a bit, and then we'll move to the other side, and I will clamp from the front now. So yet again, I'm going to fold that backing fabric in half, put a little crease in the middle, and then line that up with the middle mark on my leader cloth. And I'm making sure that my backing is also wrong side up, so that way it's facing the inside of the quilt. Wrong side up or right side down. There we go. Just line that up. And it's really nice. You got the red snapper right on the top of the rail, and you just press down and that locks in place. And then I'll take this and stretch it out. And you're not like giving it a hard tug or anything like that. You're just getting it nice and smooth and straight, right? That's all. And you can see that line of stitching here that created my casing for the tube that's inside of the leader cloth. That's just a perfect thing to line up with, just like so. I'll come over here and do this side. Just line that up, clamp it in place. Go. Right, and then now I'm not going to remove this clamp in the center. I'm going to leave it in place while I attach this longer bar. And of course we have much, much longer bars in the pack for bigger quilts. I think they're 36 inches long, and you just work a little bit at a time. You just make sure that the quilt stays in position. You can see here I'm just adjusting it ever so slightly, and I just work a little bit at a time. Make sure to adjust, make sure it looks good. I'm a little bit, I'll be honest, I'm a little bit persnickety, probably more so than I need to be. I mean, like if this is, I think, 1/8 of an inch off here and there, I don't think it's going to matter. I really don't. Now I remove this end clamp. There we go. Line that up and press firmly down, all the way down, even beyond where the backing fabric is. Now I'll grab my other clamp. Now I remove that center little piece. Line back up, press firmly, make sure that's lined up all the way down, just a little bit at a time. Dad and I found when we were clamping together that, you know, his system, I was kind of clamping here, then clamping here, and then going back into the center, and Dad, you know, he kind of went a little bit more systematic with it and, you know, adjusted and just went a little bit at a time, and his method worked better. So that was something we picked up, just both of us working together to clamp a really big quilt to the frame, and that worked great. There we go. Every once in a while I find those edges, you know, I like to fiddle with them a little bit, but I think the more I do this, the easier and better it's going to get. Okay, so now I lock my clamps. I'll unlock the back clamp so I can readjust. Roll this back, and you can see that backing fabric is ready to go. Clamp that down, give it a tighten. It is ready to go. All I've got to do now is layer my backing fabric over and then my quilt block, and I am ready to start quilting. Now, you might be wondering about the last clamp, and that is the bottom front rail, about when you use this one. And this is really when I'm doing a quilt where I want extra tension, where I've stitched the quilt on, and then I will go ahead and clamp the end of the quilt top to this bottommost leader cloth. I also sometimes use this when I'm doing a very, very bulky quilt with, let's say, minky on the back and super fluffy batting in the middle. Well, then I will actually pin the backing, or I should say clamp the backing to the bottom leader cloth, and that way all the bulk gets rolled up on this bottom rail, and that way I can use my quilt clips here on the front, and I have a much less bulky space here on the front. So it's just different situations for different styles of quilts, kind of how you adjust and load. But for a quilt block like this, something small, what I'm going to do is actually just get this in place. This is my batting. I'm going to get that generally in place, smooth it out. I will stitch along this top edge with my long arm with the channel locks in place. Then I'll put the quilt top over, stitch along that top edge again, nice and straight, so I have something to line up with, and then it's ready for quilting. I won't do any extra clamping. I'll just put my quilt clips right here. Let me grab those. You can see what that looks like. There's another type of clamping system, but this just holds the quilt just like that right across the front. So combination of those two things, that's how I load my long arm now. So I hope you can see just how much time you will save by using Renae's red snappers on your long arm. It does take a little bit of effort to get that stitching done, making the gusset, so that way you can fit in the tubing for your snappers. But once you get that stitched, you can use them over and over and over again. And each time you use it, it saves you lots of time penning. You don't have to deal with any of those headaches. You don't have to accidentally stab yourself and bleed all over the quilt. None of that. So I hope that this has helped you understand how to use Renae's red snappers, and you can find your set at leaday.com/snapper. So come and check that out, and until next time, let's go quilt.